Your motivation for running?
I think there are two independent motivations. One was, just philosophically, I have a incredibly broad tools in my tool chest.
Mm-hmm.
A technology innovator in my youth, from age 9. At age 11, I built advanced logistics computer systems for the Navy. That was something I did, including, a lot of software for, companies like Boeing and GE for advanced design. I did that through my teens.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I said, you know what? I want to be a lawyer. And I went and became a lawyer. I, practiced for the chief judge of the District of Maryland and for the Fourth Circuit.
Oh, wow. That's
for opinions, including one protecting affirmative action in the Fourth Circuit, the Bakke decision. That's my writing. And then I said, you know what? I don't want to be a lawyer all my life, and I went on to start a hotel company that's pretty innovative after serving in India for 5 years at Hilton. So I had 0 hotels in India when I started with them. They had just lost the contract with Oberoi, and they lost all their co-branded Trident Hilton hotels. Mm-hmm. So I moved to India and spent 5 years not only learning, at a high level what the hospitality business was, but actually learning and practicing U.S. Indo trade. Mm-hmm. I was, the head of the world's largest hotel company that was American in India. So I got to meet not only political figures, I became culturally ingrained, Bollywood to Tollywood, in terms of kind of profile, me compared to any of the other candidates in my race in the 3rd district. I have the broadest tools, kind of available to me. Mm-hmm. So I started thinking, with all the dysfunction in Washington, who could best deliver meaniful change, not only at the 3rd district level, but at the national level. And mm-hmm. I actually believe that if I get to Washington, and if I am able to win this race, which we're becoming more and more confident there's a real shot.
That's great, yeah.
I could actually be the first Indian-American Speaker of the House, right? And that is now my goal. Like we're biting off a bigger chunk, but my dad is 81 years old. He's one of the world's smartest engineers. He's a fellow of the American Society of Civil Engineers, far smarter than I am. He says, son, if you make it to Congress, you can be president. So now that's. He said that, and I said, Dad, you're saying it because you're my dad.
Yeah.
But, I actually believe that if you look at my background and if you compare me even against the existing Indian American caucus, I favor, I'm pretty favorable mm-hmm. on that. I mean, I was a political science major, American political institutions in my youth. I've done work in a whole variety of industries at a high level. Kind of pedigree is there. When I'm in a crowd, people say, wow, I like him, yeah. So where I'm just picking up the indicia of how I think we can be successful. When I started this, I didn't really necessarily know any of that, right? I kind of knew that I was qualified, mm-hmm. but I didn't know how well it would resonate. Now, as we're seeing 7-8 months in, we're seeing, I think we're polling now, and the next polls that are released, I think will show that I'm in that top of that bucket because people are beginning to see me and they're saying, wow, here's another option to the establishment candidates, and that we like it. So that's answering the first bit of why and what motivated me. Let me give you the second bit. Mm-hmm. Indian Americans need more representation in Washington. From Maine to Florida, 174 congressional seats, 14 states. 8 of those 14 states have the largest Indian American populations in the country. There's not a single mm-hmm. goddamn Indian American that's won in that band. So that's another motivator, and it's a big one, because our caucus will be more successful when we are nationwide, not just concentrated in California and an outcropping in Illinois. And I'll be honest. I think people in this district don't see me as Indian American, right? They see me as more, in many ways, white. Even though at my core I speak Bengali, I lived in India, I eat rice with my hands when I'm not on a low carb diet. So fundamentally, I think I'm a very good bridge between the white audience that needs to vote me in. This is 55 or 60% white in our district, and there is a Latino base of voters, but the 11,000 Indians that are in our district, we are going to try to motivate them to vote. But if you look at their voting records, 37, not percent, but 37 voted in one of the last two primaries, right? 37 out of almost 11,000 we've identified.
Wow.
The motivation here for us is to empower Indians to actually get out and vote when it matters. So this, talking to you guys is in many ways for us part of a culmination of what we're already doing. Our field operation is really going to be outreach to Indian Americans, because we believe that the icing on the cake here to win this election is going to be, look, it's an 10-way primary on the Democratic side. In 10 ways, there's no chance for a newcomer Indian American. In a 2 or 3-way, there's no chance for a newcomer Indian American. In a 10-way, I've positioned myself as the reasonable candidate, not far left, not far right. So, those are two motivations. I'm sorry for running long. I think that's a little bit of the political habit of rambling now. But
you talked a little bit about the Indian caucus being a bridge between the Indian community and Washington. How do you think that caucus can be more effective? Is it just electing more Indian Americans, or can there be more that happens?
Look, I think electing more is important because, as proud as we are of, Ami Bera, for example, or Pramila Jayapal, we never see them here in the community. So on this coast, the relevance of the Indian American representation in Washington is, I know, look, you're sitting in Washington, so you're likely to see them much more, right? But sitting in Boston, we don't. Sitting in anywhere in New England, we don't. Down in Florida, where we have business operations, we don't. So engagement is going to, you're right, it's that, fundamentally it means getting more Indian Americans. But I'll be a vocal advocate for, INPAC, in this area, because it's important. I am shocked that 37 Indians voted in one of the last two primaries. That's from Vote Builder. Now, assume there's an error rate of, let's say, 30% undercount, right? Well, then we're at 60 votes.
Yeah. Not much of a difference, yeah.
That is ridiculous. And it's, but it takes somebody that can capture the imagination of the Indian American population to change that and to make that bridge. Look, I've been active for 40 plus years in the Indian American community here. IAGB, whether it's Prabashi, Bengalis of New England, Thai when I was in technology, SABA, which is the South Asian Bar Association. Obviously I'm a lawyer. All of those things fundamentally have been part of my engagement, but there has been no political outlet. I think this is going to be the final bridge. Yeah, the Bengali community is active, but not very political or politically kind of motivated in giving. So I was speaking to a group of Patel Samaj in Wilmington, Massachusetts. 42 together at a Knights of Columbus. I got to tell you, the pride that they had.
Yeah.
Forget about Bengali, forget about it. They were like There were pictures, and so now we're going to be doing some fundraising, before the quarter end. I mean, I think our goal is to hit another $100,000 from the Indian community for this quarter, maybe a little bit more. We have 16 days, so the focus is really going to turn now to, we've for a campaign that has raised, I should say is new fundraising. The fact that we're going to exceed $1 million probably this quarter, or at least come damn close to $1 million total raised. It's nothing to,
Yeah, congratulations. That's great.
Yeah, and look, if I had done it, we had a shit fundraiser that we fired, and we got a new one last month. If I had this guy for 7 months, I would have had $3 million in the bank. Now that's nobody's fault but my own. But it's good to know. But we got, look, I'm not here to run multiple campaigns. I'm here to win this one. Mm-hmm. And what we're seeing on the ground, the last two debates, foreign policy people said, we've got a ton of data saying that, I won that debate. Not only did Lowell Sun coverage of it was it very positive, but the people are beginning to see that, remember, when an Indian American shows up with a name like Beej, and some of the newspapers still call it Beej, even though we're registered as Beej. They're like, what is this guy is he going to sound like Apu when he opens his mouth, right? I mean, that is an issue when you show up at a forum. So you open your mouth and suddenly you sound like a white person. Mm-hmm. That calms a lot of nerves in a predominantly white district. Mm-hmm. And I think, fundamentally, we're beginning to not only calm nerves, but people are like, God, he's local. He's done shit here. Mm-hmm. He owns businesses. He has employees. He has 75 employees here. He's invested his life's work. His mom has been a professor there 46 years, started sociology. Dad's, they start adding things up. And that, I think, is why we're going to win this thing. I think, people are beginning to see that option to the kind of establishment Democrat. Oddly enough, and I hate to say it, I think there's a Trump element in terms of corruption that we have. Mm-hmm. And, I'm a liberal to moderate Democrat. But, we're using a lot of the disruptive features of his campaign. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm meandering from the question that you asked.
No, it's okay. This is about hearing you, so whatever you feel is important, we're going to.
Yeah. Well, no, I appreciate that. Anyway, so, again, strengthening. Look, I've lived in India.
Yeah.
Right? I think, and I'm now reaching out to Americans living abroad. The Democrats abroad as a good example, which I was very involved in when I lived in India. I want to engage the Indian American community that's living as expats in India. So, our outreach in the next couple of weeks will be, to that community as well, to engage them. That'll bring Indians closer. That'll create a more cohesive bloc. We need power. That's what I'm saying to the Indian American community, and I'm saying it with a level of passion that, to be honest, I don't hear even from, Kamala Harris, mm-hmm. right? We need power, and we deserve power. We have a lot of other things. We have achievement. We're a model minority, this, that, and the other thing. We need power, and I think I can deliver that for the Indian American community. That, I think, is the message that I want people to take away.
The U.S. and India have a pretty strong relationship in terms of investment and trade, which Indian Americans value heavily, as you know. I mean, they run tons of small businesses, and whether it's there or here. So how would you protect these small businesses for these Indian Americans? What more can we do in terms of immigration with all these visa situation that's popping up for H-1B visas, for student visas? So how can we get more Indian Americans here for their small businesses, protect those businesses?
It's a great question, because fundamentally, think about Trump, right? Mm-hmm. Trump has done things on the one hand to hurt Indian Americans in the U.S. The whole racist overtone mm-hmm. Is hurting especially Sikhs, right? The number of Sikhs killed since Trump was elected is alarming. hate crimes are on the rise, all of that. But on the other side, he's a fan of Indian Americans and a fan of India because there's a common thread of almost anti-Muslim sentiment amongst the especially with HAF and other organizations. But again, in his core, there's this kind of anti-Islamic sentiment. So there's this kind of, I like India and Indians because they have a common enemy, and at the same time he's for Indian Americans kind of in the general population. What can we do to strengthen the position of Indian Americans in the Indo-American trade? First of all, we need to clarify. I'm not a free trade guy. Okay, I'll put that out there. I'm a balanced trade guy. What that means is that we have to create better, more dynamic bilateral trade agreements with India. There's a lot that we can do on trade with India, right? So you create that as part of a really solid bilateral trade agreement that includes business services. So right now our trade agreements don't cover, for example, Citibank has a huge operation in India, right? Those aren't covered in some of our trade agreements. So it's not being captured fully, number one. So I would go with a bilateral trade agreement that encourages outsourcing as a good example, which will continue to help and protect Indian businesses in India. But also think about us. Our small little 125 person hotel company has 2 employees in India, right? So we actually outsource a little bit ourselves. And that is a very useful extra for a small operation in Goa. Okay. Now, why do we maintain that? Because I spent 5 years of my life building up the hospitality industry. I use that, and I want to be relevant. When I go to India, I have a lot of relevance there. I'd like to go back now as the congressman-elect, and I will be a very vocal India advocate in India, and I can just see it because I have a lot of Bollywood contacts. I have a lot of people who, we're going to make this thing a little bit more rock star, and we're going to talk about why Indians need more power in the U.S. I think we can do that. I think we can raise a lot more money in India for American growth in the Indo-American relationship. So bilateral trade, more contact with India, protecting the small businesses. Remember, most of us Indians in the United States own or touch a small business. And the small businesses that I talked to, when I spoke at the AHOA conference about a month and a half, maybe 2 months ago, I've got rounding applause because I said, listen, not only are we not powerful in Washington, but one of the reasons we're seeing our small businesses hurt is that we don't have people to actually stand up for us. And not only small businesses, but the other bit of power back, have more than 50 mid-scale hotels. So nobody's speaking for us, partly because we're brown and easier for us to get to say, listen, we're going to take care of these businesses before we take care of your businesses. We're going to take care of these countries before we take care of your country. So these are where I think I can be very effective. And again, I think it's by being a little bit of the coconut where I can speak the white person speak, but I can also know that I have a lot to protect because when they look at me originally, they don't see white, they see Indian. And so I got to protect that bit of it. And, I look at race and these issues. India has got to get more respect. We've gotten a lot more in the last, 20 years. I think Clinton step, oddly enough, carried on similarly, even though he wasn't liked. When I was living in India and Bush was our president, there was a lot of disconnect between the two countries. Obama, I think, carried on, has not anything to disrupt it. We need more respect in America for what our source country is. I wrote back 30 now, almost 30 years ago, about the Eastern roots of Western multiculturalism. right? My thesis at Middlebury College was on that topic, that how the Bhagavad Gita is a foundational document for a lot of Latin texts, including the theories, linguistic and spiritual theories of Christianity. There's a lot that has been borrowed. We need to remind people of that, right? If we do that, suddenly we won't be the rinky-dink country that's trying to make it in the world, right? It's going to be, we've been impressed for all these years, and now hear us roar. Jaguar fundamentally is now owned by Indians, right? So there is that movement is going in the right direction, but we've got a lot more to do. And I think I understand the trade piece because I worked in India on behalf of an American company, and in Washington, I'm the best ambassador on trade. I have done that work.
Organizations like USINPAC and other Indian-American representative organizations, they do a lot to get the message out. What more do you think we can do to increase our engagement?
I think reaching out to all the small linguistic cultural organizations that are Indian and having an outreach to them and saying, listen, it's important for you to vote in primaries, right? It's important for you to engage. So I would encourage all of the politically motivated and American organizations to reach out more actively and aggressively to all of them. Bengalis come to mind because the Bengalis are ridiculous on politics. Right? They're ridiculous. They're brain dead on politics. They need you guys more than you need them. But I think a extension of your outreach to those organizations will be very, very positive, because long term, if Bengalis engage and they engage as Indian Americans, it'll help everybody. The Bengali caucus in the Massachusetts area is strong. I mean, it's a very active. This is the namesake area, right? All the Bengalis that came here, more so than in other parts of the country, came here for the educational component, right, in the 50s and 60s. That's when a huge number of Bengalis came to Massachusetts. Again, political activity levels, with the exception of people like Toby and Anjan Mukherjee and others that, were involved in all that, active. And that's sad. It's incredibly sad. But I think that type of engagement at the grassroots level is going to help. It's going to help a lot, bringing in, non-traditional, not just Telugu speakers, right? But, people who don't speak Hindi very much, but are Bengali speakers and Bangladeshis are more active politically, oddly enough, than Bengali Indians are. So I think, USINPAC could definitely make a difference in that type of outreach.
And what future impact do you see Indians and Indian Americans making on the democratic process? Like, are we headed in the right direction? Are we stagnant?
Yeah, I'm seeing it. We are heading in the right direction. It's just going to take a couple of years for us to have the kind of positioning that we deserve. But I was at this guy named Ramesh Kapoor. I don't know if you know Ramesh.
No.
He's a big bundler I know he raised a ton of money for Ami Bera, a ton of money for Aruna Miller in this cycle, and a couple of others. But he's retired and he had a 70th birthday party, and I met probably 65 Indian Americans at that party. Beautiful house, and they were from around the United States. People in Alabama, Mississippi, Indians who were very Republican, very supportive of Republicans, to very Obama, very Democrat. It was a really interesting mix. He said something that, he's maxed to our campaign, but he said something, and he's going to be doing a fundraiser for us. He says, Indian Americans, this is our time. I think we're heading in the right direction. Again, hopefully this election cycle we'll see some positive gains, but I think we're headed in the right direction. I think we're going to see a bit of a brown wave in the next one or two election cycles. We have to. I think the engagement that we're seeing is very positive.
I just want to give you a chance to give your final thoughts. If you have a message to the Indian American community, sorry to put you on the spot, but
Yeah.
Whatever you want to say.
My message generally to the Indian American community is that, when we came to this country, and let me tell you a little story of my dad, right? My dad left India in 1964 with $8 in his pocket, leaving the country that year left with the max they could take, $8. Okay? Now, here's where Dad's story becomes even more interesting. He didn't go to Canada and he didn't come to the US. He went to Germany, where he knew one word of German, which is Wasser, meaning water, right? And so he could ask for water because
Yeah.
he needed like water, right? So we share this common past of not looking at a struggle and saying, "Hey, we can't do it," right? That's our destiny in many ways, right? With the Jews have their destiny in with the seas parting and going. There is that in the Old Testament. The Indian destiny has been written, I think, much more recently by the migration of Indian American or Indians to America post, the late 50s, right? That has been an unbelievable journey. And what I'm proud to be a part of is the culmination of that journey as people who are credible, well-spoken, intelligent, educated, experienced say enough is enough. And I'm not angry. I'm incredible Indian Americans who have done well in other walks of life say it's time to show the rest of the country that Indian Americans aren't a mod we have, just like Irish Americans. We're Americans too. And I think, bringing political power back home to our community is why I am doing this in a way that I think we're going to win, because I'm fueled by that. Listen, I'll tell you this. When we first met with, months and months ago, when we first met with some of the Indian American political organizations, and they would barely talk to us because they were like, well, you're not viable yet.
Mm-hmm.
I got to tell you, that's when I went back. One day, I sat in my office, kind of bummed out. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I should drop out. This was months ago. And then I thought to myself, if my father, sitting in 1964 in Dum Dum Airport with flies and mosquitoes and stinky people and 2 pieces of clothing and a tiny little suitcase, said, hey, I don't have enough, then I wouldn't be here, right? All these fancy words about being American and proud and Indian at the same time wouldn't have happened. And that's where I think I take the motivation. It's a very Indian motivation. If people say you can't do it, look at us now. I think we're in a way that's credible. We're going to, hit the radar. We're beginning to see people saying, I'm with this guy. And, it's a very Indian trait. That's how the Indian hotel industry was created here in America, right? I wasn't part of that industry. We're Bengali. The Gujaratis single-handedly made Indians relevant in a massive industry, a multi-billion-dollar industry. The chair of our finance committee is a guy named Jay Shah. Jay Shah is the CEO of a company called Harsha Hospitality Trust. It's traded on the New York Stock Exchange, the largest Indian American company in the lodging sector globally, right? They weren't relevant 40 years ago. They built it. They were told, no, you can't do it, and they did it. So I'm when I talk to Jay and hear his pride, when I first told him, he said I was crazy, but he worked for Senator Hines in Pennsylvania. In fact, when Senator Hines died, I'll tell you, I think we've proven that if you put your mind to it, the Indian American adage that be better than the rest, fingers crossed. Let's see. I mean, this is, it's all good to talk. Now we got to win this thing. But I feel very good, and I feel that the Indian American takeaway is that we should all engage in the process. There are a lot of us out there that are very qualified and capable of winning these elections. We have community connections, people like us outside our own communities. We're well integrated. We are well spoken. We're well educated. We're well experienced. We can do this. And I think, I'm looking forward to proving that we can here in Massachusetts.
Well, best of luck to you in the coming time.